The pre-approval letter for our condo came in the mail on a Thursday afternoon. I left it on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that said finally. 5 years of saving. 5 years of splitting rent on a 2-bedroom in East Toronto while every other couple we knew either bought something or gave up and moved to Hamilton. We had stayed the course, we had been patient. And now it was finally happening. My girlfriend saw the note when she got home from work. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I noticed that. I told myself she was tired. By Sunday morning, I understood. We were sitting at the kitchen table. November light coming through the window, gray and thin the way it gets in Toronto before the snow arrives. I was on my second coffee. She was holding hers with both hands but hadn't taken a single sip. I remember that clearly. The mug just sitting there, going cold, while she stared at the surface of it, like it owed her something. She finally said my name. I set down my cup. She took a slow breath. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. I think I need some space. I waited. Because space is one of those words that means nothing and everything. And I needed her to say more before I let myself react. She kept her eyes on the table. There's someone I've been talking to. Someone from before. My chest tightened. From before? She looked up at me then, and I wish she hadn't. Because what I saw wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It was the face of someone who had already made a decision, and was now sitting across from me to deliver the paperwork. Aiden reached out a few months ago. We've been in touch. Aiden. I knew that name. Her ex from university. The one she had described as a chapter she was grateful to have closed. The one who, according to her, had never been serious about anything, and had drifted out of her life without much ceremony. The one who apparently hadn't drifted as far as I'd thought. My voice came out flat. How long? About 4 months. I looked at her. 4 months. While we were signing up for a joint savings account at the TD branch on College Street. While we were running mortgage amortization tables on my laptop at the kitchen table. While we were at my parents' place in Oakville for Thanksgiving dinner. 4 months of me, not knowing a single thing about it. She swallowed. I still have feelings for him. I don't know what they mean. But I can't walk into buying a home with you without figuring that out first. So, what are you actually saying? She exhaled. I need time to see him, to understand what I'm feeling. A few weeks, maybe a month. I need clarity before we make any permanent decisions. And if it doesn't work out with him? Her eyes dropped back to the table. Then I'd come back. And we could move forward. The room went quiet, in a way that felt physical. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was something much darker. You want to spend a month with your ex, I said, to test whether you should be with him instead of me. And then, if he disappoints you, you'll come back and we'll just pick up where we left off? Buy a condo? She started to say I wasn't framing it fairly. But I had stopped listening to the framing. I was listening to the substance. I stood up. She looked startled. I'm not doing this, I said. Doing what? This, whatever this is. I'm not waiting on a shelf while you go try something out. I'm not going to be the fallback option. Her voice sharpened. I'm not asking you to be a fallback. I'm asking for space to think. You're asking me to hold the door open while you walk through someone else's. I'm not doing it. She pushed back from the table. You're not even trying to understand what I'm going through. I understand exactly what you said. You said you'd come back if it didn't work out. That means you're already planning to go. She looked at me with something I couldn't name. It wasn't guilt, it was closer to frustration. The frustration of someone whose plan wasn't unfolding the way she'd rehearsed it. I need you to leave, I said. What? I need you to go to your sister's, or wherever. But I need you out tonight. Her face changed. You're overreacting. That word landed like a slap. I kept my voice even. You've been talking to your ex for 4 months. You're asking for a month with him to decide if he's worth more than 5 years with me. And I'm overreacting. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I walked to our bedroom closet and pulled out her large suitcase. The one we'd used for the trip to Tofino 2 summers ago. When things between us were so good, I thought I had found the person I was going to spend my life with. I set it on the bed. When I came back to the living room, she was standing near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, staring at the pre-approval letter, still sitting there with my sticky note on top of it. I'm not asking you to choose right now, she said quietly. I'm asking for time. You've had 4 months, I said. That was your time, this is something else. She started crying then, the quiet kind, not loud or dramatic, just steady. For years that particular silence had undone me completely. If she cried, I moved toward her. It was as automatic as breathing. That evening I stayed where I was. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Are you really willing to throw away everything we built? Because I'm being honest with you? I looked at her. You weren't honest with me for 4 months. Tonight isn't honesty. Tonight is damage control. She flinched. That's not fair. No. None of this is. We stood in the kitchen for another moment without speaking. Then she went to pack. I sat on the couch and listened to her move through the apartment. Drawers opening and closing. The bathroom cabinet. The small drawer in the bedroom, where she kept things that didn't have a better place. Each sound was ordinary on its own. Together they made something that felt enormous. She came out 40 minutes later, with the suitcase, a canvas tote, and the cream-colored cardigan I had bought her the previous winter, which she was wearing when she left, which I noticed, and said nothing about. She stood at the door. I don't want this to be how we end. Then you shouldn't have started it this way. I'll call you in a few days. I shook my head. She left. The door clicked shut behind her, not a slam. Just the quiet mechanical sound of a latch catching. I sat there for a long time. The next morning, I called our mortgage broker and canceled the appointment. She was professional and kind about it. She said these things happen and to call if anything changed. I thanked her. Nothing was going to change. I called the bank and had my share of the joint savings transferred into a new individual account. It took 23 minutes, 3 security questions and 1 hold. Years of planning, gone in 23 minutes. Then I called Pierce. He picked up on the second ring, the way he always does. I told him what had happened. There was a pause. Then he said good riddance. No lecture. No 10-step plan for winning her back. Just 2 words, delivered with the certainty of someone who had always seen things clearly even when I hadn't. He came over that evening, with Vietnamese takeout from the place on Bloor. We ate on the couch and watched the Leafs game, and didn't talk about it much more than that. That was exactly what I needed. Someone to sit in the wreckage with me, without trying to explain it away. 2 days later, my sister called. I answered because she was my sister. And because I assumed she was calling to check on me. She wasn't. She started carefully. She said she cared about me. She said she just wanted me to have the full picture. My stomach dropped. What full picture? She said that my girlfriend had called her. About 3 weeks before that Sunday morning. Called her to talk through something she was feeling. My sister had told her that doubts before a major commitment were normal. Had suggested she take her time and not do anything rash. I sat very still. My sister had known. Not everything. But she had known that something was happening. That there was someone from before. That the ground beneath our relationship was not as solid as I thought. And she had said nothing to me. I asked her directly, why didn't you tell me? She said, my girlfriend had asked her not to. That she had trusted it would sort itself out. That she hadn't wanted to start a panic over something that might have been nothing. I asked if she understood that 4 months of private conversations with an ex, while planning a mortgage, together, was not nothing. She went quiet. Same. I told her I needed time, then I ended the call. For the next 48 hours, my phone became a document of everyone's disappointment in my choices. My mother said she clearly loved me, and just was going through something difficult. Her mother texted asking if we could talk. 2 mutual friends sent variations of she's devastated. Please just reach out. One of them used the phrase be the bigger person, which I have always found to be one of the most quietly dishonest phrases in the English language. What it really means is, absorb the harm, so the rest of us don't have to feel uncomfortable about it. I didn't respond to any of it. What I did instead, I wrote 1 short email and sent it to the 11 people who had been invited to a celebration dinner we'd been planning to mark putting in the condo offer. I kept it simple. Plans had changed. I was grateful for their support. I was asking for privacy. That was all. Then I blocked her on everything. The apartment was quiet in a way it had never been before. Not peaceful. Just empty. I kept waking up at 3 in the morning reaching for my phone, even though there was nothing there to reach for. Old muscle memory takes a while to unlearn. I changed the locks, not out of drama. Just because she still had a key, and I didn't want to spend energy wondering. I boxed up the things she had left. A few books, some skincare, a small succulent she'd bought at the Kensington market the previous spring. I texted her from my work email since her number was blocked. Everything would be available for pickup on Saturday between 10 and noon. I would not be there. Pierce would let her in. Pierce called me Saturday afternoon. She came, he said. She had a friend with her, she cried. She asked where I was. He told her I had plans. I didn't have plans. I was walking through the Costco on Warden Avenue for 90 minutes. Buying things as I didn't need because I had nowhere else to put my body. Then Pierce said something that made me stop in the middle of the aisle. He said, Aiden had driven her. I stood there next to a pallet of paper towels, and let that settle. He drove her to my building, Pierce said, to pick up her stuff. He waited in the car, as far as I could tell. I thanked Pierce, and told him I'd see him that week. Then I stood in the aisle for another minute or two, looking at nothing in particular. Then I put a box of crackers in my cart, and kept moving. The weeks that followed were strange and slow. I went to work, I came home. I started running again for the first time in 2 years. Just to have somewhere to put the restlessness. I cooked because I needed something to do with my hands in the evenings. I repainted the bedroom a cooler gray instead of the warm white she had chosen, and rearranged the furniture and replaced the curtains she had picked. Each change was small on its own. Together they added up to something I couldn't quite name. The apartment started feeling like mine again instead of ours. At work, something shifted. I'm a project lead at a provincial infrastructure consulting firm. The kind of work that matters and is mostly invisible. Mapping transit corridors and doing environmental assessments for municipalities across Ontario. For years I had been steady, reliable. The person who got things done without anyone needing to worry about him. After she left I became someone different, not reckless. Just sharper. I stopped leaving at 5. I started reading files nobody had asked me to read. I found an error in an environmental assessment that would have cost a regional municipal client close to $200,000 to correct after construction had already begun. I flagged it quietly without making it into anything. My director noticed. Her name was Nelson. She went by her last name professionally. And she was the kind of person who only called you into her office when it actually mattered. She closed the door, sat across from me. "You've been different this year," she said, in a good way. "I want to know if you're ready for more responsibility." She offered me a senior lead position overseeing a multi-year corridor project across 3 municipalities. More travel, a team of 4 reporting to me. A pay increase that was by any reasonable measure, significant. 6 months earlier, I would have called my girlfriend from the parking lot, before I even made it to my car. Too excited to wait until I got home. I said yes before I stood up from the chair. That evening I called Pierce. He answered on the second ring. I got promoted. A brief silence. "Dinner, Friday, you're choosing the place." We went to a Peruvian spot, on Queen Street. We had been meaning to try for over a year. We split a bottle of Malbec and talked about almost everything except her. Near the end of the evening, Pierce raised his glass. To not being someone's backup plan. I raised mine. To that. I moved into a new apartment 2 months later. A 1-bedroom on the 22nd floor of a building near the waterfront, with windows that ran floor to ceiling and a clear day view of the lake. More than I'd been spending before. Entirely mine. I also started seeing a therapist, which I had been telling myself for years I didn't need. I was wrong about that. She helped me see something I hadn't wanted to look at directly. That for most of that relationship, I had been so careful not to push too hard, or ask for too much, or make my girlfriend feel trapped or pressured. That I had quietly taught her to believe I would absorb anything she needed me to absorb. I had mistaken patience for self-erasure. I had confused being low maintenance with having no needs. It wasn't a comfortable realization. It was a useful one. 3 months after she left, the first email arrived. The subject line was, "I hope you're doing okay." She said she thought about me often. She said she was sorry for how things had unfolded. She said she had been confused, not cruel, and she hoped I could understand the difference. She did not use the word betray. She said she had handled things badly, which is what people say when they want to acknowledge a mess, without fully accepting that they made it. I read it twice, then I closed it without replying. A week later, another one. She had heard about the promotion through a mutual friend. "Congratulations," she said. "You always worked hard and you deserved it." Then a third. A few days after that. She had driven past my old building, and noticed the curtains in the window were different. That one made my skin prickle, in a way I didn't like. I blocked her email address. Then, her mother called. I almost didn't answer. Some part of me, the part raised to be polite, the part that had spent 5 years being welcomed at their dinner table in Mississauga, picked up anyway. She was gentle at first, apologetic. She said she knew it wasn't her place. She said she just wanted me to know that her daughter wasn't doing well. That things with Aiden hadn't gone the way she'd hoped. That he had turned out to be someone different than she'd remembered. I said I was sorry to hear that. She said, her daughter missed me. I looked out the window of my office. The lake was flat and gray. A ferry crossing slowly toward the island. I said, "That's not something I can help with anymore." She said, "She made a terrible mistake." I said, "Yes." She said, "People make mistakes. Especially when they're scared of something permanent." I said, "I understand that. And I also understand that she had 4 months to change course and didn't. 4 months isn't a moment of weakness. It's a direction. She went quiet for a moment. I said I genuinely wish her well, I mean that, but this conversation isn't one I'm able to have. I thanked her for calling. Then I ended the call. That night I slept 8 hours. Straight for the first time since November. Aiden showed up at my office the following week. I was coming back from a site review, still in my field vest, when the receptionist flagged me down. Sesam. Sin, said someone was waiting in the lobby. She hadn't gotten his name. She looked uncertain in the specific way that told me she probably should have sent him away. He was standing near the windows. Tall, casual, the kind of person who holds their jaw at an angle that suggests they expect to be noticed. He smiled when he saw me like we were old acquaintances running into each other at a hockey game. He said my name like he knew me. I stopped a few feet away. What do you want? He said he just wanted to clear the air. He said my girlfriend had been really emotional, and he thought if the two of us could sit down, just talk it through man to man. I said, you drove to my building and waited in the car while she packed her things. You're now standing in my office lobby. There is no version of this conversation where we're on equal footing. His jaw shifted slightly. He said, I'm just trying to help her move on. I said, then take her somewhere and help her. That's not my job anymore. He stepped forward. He said, look, she only stayed with you because you were stable. She told me that. She always said you were dependable. But dependable isn't everything, right? I looked at him. I thought about the joint savings account, the mortgage pre-approval with the sticky note, the Tofino trip, the 5 years. Then I said, and yet here you are, standing in my workplace, asking the dependable one to make things easier for you. He didn't have an answer for that. My director appeared in the hallway behind me. She looked at Aiden, she looked at me. Is there a problem? Aiden straightened up. No problem. She looked at him without expression. This is a working office. If you don't have an appointment, I'm going to ask you to leave. He looked at me one last time. He said, she'll never really get over you, whether she admits it or not. I said, that's not my concern anymore. Then I turned and walked back toward the elevators. My director fell into step beside me. She said, the ex? I said, something like that. She said he parked in visitor without signing in. I'm having security flag it. I said, thank you. She said, back to work. And that was exactly what I did. By the end of that year, my life looked almost nothing like the one she had walked away from. New apartment, new role. I had taken a long weekend to Quebec City in October, deliberately alone, to see if I could sit with myself and enjoy it. I could. I spent an evening at a small restaurant near the old town eating duck confit and drinking a glass of wine. And reading a book I had been putting off for 2 years. And I felt, for the first time in a long time, like someone building something, rather than recovering from something. 2 weeks before Christmas. She appeared in my building lobby. I had just come back from a site visit across town. It was a wet Wednesday evening. The kind of damp cold that gets into your coat regardless. I came through the lobby doors, shaking water off my jacket, and saw her standing near the elevator bank. She was thinner than I remembered. Her hair was different, shorter. She wore a dark green coat I didn't recognize. She looked like someone who had been through something and was trying hard not to show it. When she saw me, her face did something complicated. I stopped. I said, how did you get in? She said she had told the concierge she was an old friend. He had called upstairs. The person at the desk had let her wait in the lobby. I made a mental note to speak to management about that. She took a step toward me. She said, you changed your number. I said, yes. She said, and your email. I said, yes. She said, I didn't know how else to reach you. I said, that was the point. She flinched. Set. The elevator doors opened behind me. I didn't move. Because I had learned something about myself in the past year. I no longer needed to run from difficult things. I could stand in them until they were finished. She clasped her hands together. She said, can we go upstairs just to talk? 10 minutes. I said, no. She said, please. I said, no. People moved through the lobby around us. A man with a dry cleaning bag over his shoulder. A woman with a toddler bundled into a puffy snowsuit. An older gentleman in a Raptors cap heading toward the mailboxes. Life continuing around the wreckage, completely indifferent to it. She said, I made a mistake. I said nothing. So. She said, Aiden wasn't who I remembered. I had built a version of him in my head that he never actually was. By the time I understood that, you were already. She looked around the lobby, at me, at the general fact of my absence from her life. I said, gone. She nodded. Yes. I said. And now you want to know if gone is permanent. She looked at me. There were tears, quiet ones, the kind she'd always had. And for just a moment I felt the old reflex stir. 5 years of moving toward her when she cried. It was in my bones. I let it pass. She said. Is it? I said, yes. She nodded slowly. Like she had expected it and was hoping to be wrong. She said, I thought about you the entire time. I want you to know that. I said. You thought about me while you were gone, and it still wasn't enough to come back sooner. That tells me what I need to know. She looked down. Her hands were clasped tight, like she was trying to hold herself together. She said, I lost everything. I said, you didn't lose everything, you gave it away, on purpose. Because you thought there was something better waiting. And when it turned out there wasn't, you came back here hoping I'd be in the same place you'd left me. She looked up sharply. That's not. I said, it's exactly what happened. And I understand it. I'm not angry about it anymore. But understanding something and accepting it back are different things. She covered her mouth with her hand. I said, you asked me once if I thought we'd always be okay. Do you remember that? You asked me that after our second year together, when we were driving back from a camping trip up near Algonquin and it was raining and the highway was dark, and you just asked it out of nowhere, and I said yes, because I believed it. She was crying steadily now. I said, I was telling you the truth when I said it, I want you to know that. She whispered, was any of it real? I said all of it was real. That's what makes this hard. The elevator opened again behind me. I pressed the button to hold it. I said, but real isn't the same as permanent, and it isn't the same as enough. She looked at me one last time. Through her tears, through the lobby light, through 5 years of Sunday mornings and road trips and Thanksgiving dinners and mortgage calculators, and all the ordinary architecture of a life we had built together, and she had quietly taken apart over, for 4 months of conversations I was never told about. She said, I'm so sorry. I said, I know. And I meant it. The apology was real. It was also 4 months and one Sunday morning, and one unanswered instinct too late to do anything with. I stepped into the elevator. The doors began to close. Through the narrowing gap I could see her standing in the lobby, holding herself, watching the space where I had been. I pressed the button for the 22nd floor. And as the lobby disappeared behind the closing doors, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not grief, not relief. Just the quiet, settled certainty of a man who had finally stopped leaving the light on. For someone who had long since stopped deserving it.